All right. Welcome back, everyone. We are here to discuss the MSC Cruises Emilia-Romagna GP. How many more words could you add to that, right? We're back to a normal race schedule this week after 2 sprint weekends in a row. And I'm feeling there's a lot of short-term upside after the Miami GP, which we're going to talk about today. Miami was a race of shakeups for a lot of people. I don't know about you guys, but I saw a lot of downward red arrows on leaderboards after the last race. So if that wasn't you, consider yourself lucky. My name is Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of GridRival. With me today, I have Mike GP, CTO, Ryan Booth, fan of or president of Logan Sargent Fan Club and our business operations director, and William Laddie, our principal software engineer. We are here today to talk about the race coming up this weekend in Italy. And just a reminder before we get going to subscribe and join the channel if you want to see follow-up events like this. Find us on Discord as well. And we already have next week's show live. So if you want to go and tag it and save it ahead of Monaco, you can find that in our YouTube channel. So let's get going. Quick recap of Miami. I think we'll go over some winners and losers. There's a lot more losers last weekend in terms of like salary and value upside going into this weekend than there was winners. Obviously, the big winner, Lando, first race after 15 times on the podium. He's a great guy to see win. I don't know about you guys, but I think Lando's one of the more kind of entertaining, lovable drivers to see. He's a guy that I'd love to see on that top spot a lot more often. Up 1.4 million in value. Yuki Tsunoda up 2 million in value. Hulkenberg up 1.3, and then kind of a surprise, big winner, I thought, Alpine as a team up 1.6. So it we'll see how the next couple of races pan out, but it seems like perhaps they have done something to stop the downward spiral that they were on at the start of the season, which is exciting. And then losers, first and foremost, is me. I lost 4.8 million in team value last week. Every spot on my roster went down in value. I don't know how many times that's ever happened, but I think at one point I was up to 123 million at the first 5 races, and now I'm back down to like, I think 112 or 13. So I've had a rough last 2 events. But as far as drivers go, like I said, a lot of red last week. Magnussen down 1.8, Piastri down 1.8. Albon down 1.7, Russell down 1.4, Stroll down 1.3. 3 of these people I had on my team. And Sargent, I will say, only down 1. As we all know, Logan is accustomed to dropping value. So maybe 1's not that bad for him. Aston Martin as a team, mostly thanks to Lance Stroll's 17th place finish, down 1.6. So what that means is a lot of upside. This is a week, and you'll see we're going to go over our own lineups here in a sec. This is a week where I personally see a lot of opportunity to sign short-term contracts, right? If you've been following along and listening to the 4 of us chat since the start of the season, you'll know for me personally, I usually don't sign 1-2 race contracts. Sometimes it's a little bit too risky, I think. If a driver has 1 bad event or, God forbid, 2 in a row, it can be pretty costly and you don't get the opportunity for them to recover. But I think sometimes when you have all these losers like this and you have a lot of DNFs, or like, a driver like Piastri dropping 1.8 to me is an immediate opportunity to maybe sign him. If you need to get quick value like I do now because I've dropped so much, I think he's an opportunity to bring onto your team for maybe a 1 or 2 race contract to get that short little boost. So any commentary from you guys on winners or losers, recap from Miami, anything you want to say before we kind of get into rosters? Any questions that have come up so far?
I think that Aston was not very good all around last weekend. Like, their sprint was absolute garbage. I had both of their drivers, and Lance Stroll, if he knows how to drive, he gets you some points. And I rode that train straight into a deficit. So, Aston, I think, is the biggest loser. And I would agree that Alpine is caught up. So, I'm not even sure that Aston's going to be 5th best going forward, especially when you can only count on one of their drivers. It wasn't Sargent's fault. We'll say that in Sargent's defense. We talked about him as one of the losers.
Very true.
And like he's got more pace of late. And if people just stop driving into him,
Yeah.
like I think we can actually see some upside for Sargent. In fact, I might even grab Sargent this week.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I mean,
Yeah,
Magnussen is a menace.
Yeah, he
He's
really
running
is.
around accumulating like 20 minutes worth of penalties. He's taken out Sargent. He's just all over the place. This isn't the first time he's done it. He's just having himself quite a season. It's been entertaining, but when it bites you in the behind, it's not as fun.
He is
He
sitting
did-
on. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say he did help out Norris this week. I think he took out Sargent, but really gave Norris that win as a result of the safety car coming out.
Yeah, and Magnussen is now sitting on 10 penalty points, and if he gets 2 more, that is going to be an automatic race ban. And he got his first point at Saudi Arabia this year. It's not like these are points dating back to last summer. Like he just has completely forgotten how to drive this year. And it would not surprise me if maybe we see Magnussen not taking part in a race at some point this year. In fact, I heard that they're going to run Behrman on Friday. I'm not sure which Haas car, but they're going to run Behrman on Friday this week. Maybe this is practice just in case, Magnussen slips up again.
Yeah.
And
Well, Haas, really, since they have started and since they joined Formula One as a constructor, they have stuck to this strategy of having, very tenured drivers on their teams. They have not taken a risk on anybody new yet. So, I think
except for
Behrman,
the Mick Schumacher
and
that's
Nikita
true, sorry.
Mazepin.
Yeah.
Nick-
So
It
one
didn't work
season,
out super well either.
There
That
was
didn't
money
work
involved,
out.
though.
there was money involved, and there was also, there was a lot of stuff involved that year. And I think a lot of people, I think the removal of Schumacher, I think it was fairly controversial. So, anyways, they're doing well to their credit. Like Hulkenberg is doing excellent, but it would be interesting to just see a strategic change, and maybe we'll see that now that they're under a little bit of new leadership with Gunther. But who knows what the heck's going to happen there?
Public service announcement. If anyone has or is signing Magnussen to a 5-race contract, here is what's going to happen. If he gets 2 more points of penalties and gets banned for the next event, and you have him under contract, you will get automatically subbed with whoever Haas puts in his seat for that race. You do not get a free drop. You will get subbed in, most likely Ollie Behrman. So if you're putting a 5-race contract together, a 4-race contract together with Kevin Magnussen, just assume one of those might be with Ollie Behrman. Okay.
And that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
I might do that right now.
let's face it. You called Haas's drivers veterans. I call them washed.
Yeah, right.
I mean, before those two, before Schumacher and Mazepin, it was Grosjean and Gutierrez, and those weren't exactly inspiring names either.
Oh yeah, God, I am forgetting a lot. Anyway, jeez. There's a question from Derek. Says, I have a large amount after. If I have a large amount after contract ends, should I focus on a driver or a team? I don't know that there's a right answer. I think I'd be looking at, the thing to remember about teams is they can fluctuate up or down by 3 million per event, versus drivers, which can only fluctuate 2. Now, for a team to move its full amount, you have to have both drivers perform and swing in one certain way. So that is something to consider. But I think it just really depends strategically. You're welcome to type in, any more information if you want us to or give specifics if you want us to maybe address something or some unique scenario. But generally speaking, I don't know. I think for me, it's really specific on the circumstance. Is it 1 spot open? Do you have 3 spots open? How much excess do you have in terms of cash? I think there's a lot of different variables at stake here.
Yeah, I've got some context there because I think I talked to someone about this last week. There's more points potential on the driver side, and there's more contract value perspective on the team side. And right now, I don't think you're going to see a tremendous fluctuation of value in the next few races on teams, unless Aston Martin was a fluke, that they performed as poorly as they did. Since they dropped 1.6, they can gain that back possibly if that was just a fluke or not. So me personally right now, not knowing your lineup, I would probably skew towards driver right now over team for points in value relative to the money you're spending. rather than spending it on a team. I signed Red Bull. I never signed Red Bull this early in the season. I signed Red Bull after the Max Verstappen DNF to ride, basically get a nice little boost of a couple $100K. But that I'm typically not spending big money on constructors until later in the season for points.
Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Harry Wells says, I'm really enjoying the game. Thanks, Harry. Liam, I signed Tsunoda last race for 3 weeks. He went up 2 million. Should I drop him now? Tsunoda, I don't feel like Tsunoda's... I don't think I'd put Tsunoda in the overvalued category. I feel like he's definitely probably getting close to his ceiling. But he's been doing really well. And I mean, like, I'm just pulling up let me pull up my roster list here. Because if I remember, he's ranked right under Hülkenberg. So like, he's kind of top of the best of the rest. If you think about it, if you consider Aston as part of the best, or at least top 10, he's 14.9. The highest top 5 team driver right now is Hülkenberg at 15.2. So, if Tsunoda can continue to finish 11, 10, I think he probably still has a little bit more upside, but I don't think a ton.
The other question I'll ask you is, by you, I mean the viewer, Liam. Thanks for watching. If you don't have Tsunoda, if you drop Tsunoda, who's your talent driver going to be? Like, I actually really like Tsunoda as talent driver, and that would be a tough gap to fill. And I do think that he is approaching the ceiling value-wise, but I do think that he is a solid choice of talent driver.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with where Tsunoda's at right now. I wouldn't be rushing to go buy him, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to cut him. I'm not going to pay an early release fee to get rid of him. I think the biggest question with those drivers all in that chunk is, what are the Alpines? Because if the Alpines are real, they're going to start eating into some of those points. Tsunoda's not just guaranteed 10th, 11th, 12th. If Ocon and Gasly are in the mix, that might bump them down a little bit. But if the Alpines turn back into what they started the season as, then there's still a ton of value in that tier of drivers. But it's really comes down to what you think about Alpine. And back to the start, I wouldn't cut him. I also am not rushing to buy him.
And for any new people on the stream, or just also a good reminder, when we're talking about 10th, 11th, 12th, we're not talking about race finish position, 10th, 11th, 12th. We're not talking about salary highest to lowest, 10th, 11th, 12th. We're talking about fantasy rank, 10th, 11th, 12th, because fantasy rank is where your value change comes in. So right now, the Hülkenberg and Tsunoda right at that $15 million mark, 10th and 11th from fantasy rank is like 17.7 million is the salary. So if they continue to get 10th and 11th, maybe a 9th and kind of averaging around 10, there's about $2 million worth of contract value left on both Hülkenberg and Tsunoda. But to Ryan's point, it depends on Alpine, because if Alpine slots in ahead of them and they're in 11th and 12th, then they're going to be flat to like minus 200,000 plus 200,000. And there's not really much value there. If the Alpines are able to slot in, if Stroll is able to put together a lap, then it puts more competition towards the top. But talent driver, Tsunoda and Hülkenberg, in my opinion, are the best two right now. I've been gambling Stroll talent driver all season. It's paid off big and it's hurt big, and that is the story.
It always does. That's Lance Stroll for you as a contract. I mean, it's been like that ever since he's been on our game. It's just like, I don't know how many times I have to continue to attempting to sign him to learn that the hard way. But
if you're signing Stroll, remember Monaco is 2 races from now, and there are lots of walls at Monaco. Just saying. Yeah, it's true. And then the race after that is Canada, and there's one particularly famous wall there. Just saying.
Yep. Let's see. Another question. Someone asked, who'd you say is undervalued? We're going to go over that in a minute, so hang tight for that. Should I drop Sauber for 223? How is
good question?
Where's their? Let me look at that. Sauber's at. Oh, kick? I don't think so. They're last place. I mean, if they have one good weekend, you drop them.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm out on them.
Yeah, I guess there's some other. I would say, okay, yeah, I have 15.2 million budget. And is that just to sign? This is Kelsey. Is this just to sign one spot? You only have one spot open if you drop them.
Are you?
If so, I would definitely drop them because you could pick up. You could upgrade all the way up to Alpine, or if you have driver spots open, you can move your budget around a little bit.
Yeah, like if you're talking about spending 15 million on a constructor, I think Alpine's really intriguing. If you're looking to spend that elsewhere, like I would say, like if it's between Sauber and Williams, like I would take Williams all day. Like I have no problem dropping kick Sauber and taking Williams right now, like whatever your state is, because the Williams ceiling is a lot higher. Like they would have managed a lot more points last week if Magnussen could have just watched where he was driving. Sauber, I can't say the same. Like that car just does not have the pace, and I'm not sure that they're going to anytime soon.
And the point I'll make there is the floor. So Kick Sauber has not really lost contract value because they're consistently coming in 9th in fantasy points as a constructor, which is 7.6 million. So both Williams and Kick, if they are the 9th constructor, you will get the points and not lose any money. So that's not the worst situation, but like if you're wrong, you will lose money. Whoever of those two comes in last will net you a loss on that.
Another question. I only have enough this week to sign K-Mag. Well, that means you should have enough to sign Bottas or Sargent too. That's a different conversation. Safer to sign for one race or multiple races. I'm bullish on Behrman. I think K-Mag gets 2 more points. That is a tough one because K-Mag, I would say, slightly undervalued now. Maybe risky. He dropped almost 2 million after the last race. I think K-Mag is capable of a lot more than 18th position in fantasy rank. But to the point we talked about earlier, you are taking a risk. But I don't know. This is a tough one because if Behrman does take his place, I think you may do better than if Kevin Magnussen is driving himself in that contract. So that I don't know. I could go either way on that one. I don't know if you guys feel strongly.
There's nothing wrong with K-Mag at 7.8.
I agree.
I think that's fine. You look at who else is down at the bottom. Unless you want to run it back with Ricardo, I've had that problem all year, and I'm trying to quit him. I'm not signing Bottas. And then if you want to go all the way down at Sargent for you get a little extra budget for the rest of your team. But if you can really only slot one person in at that rate, it's K-Mag, and it's K-Mag by a mile.
And for what it's worth, I don't know that this happens very often. I mean, to look at this from the perspective of what sort of constructor is he in, and how capable is that? He is 7 spots below his teammate, which is pretty rare in this game. You usually see sometimes 5. I think right now Piastri is he's 6 below, 5 below.
Stroll's another one with a 7-spot gap.
Oh yeah, wow. So those both big. So they're drivers that like they if they have a good week, they're going to make you $2 million. But it's just like going back to our comments on Stroll. It's just it's a gamble. Sometimes you got to gamble to win. I think a lot of these decisions depend on where you're at in your league, right? Strategically, like what decisions need to be made to get you ahead. Any other questions coming in here?
Yeah, can Sargent's value go down under 4 million?
Yes, it can.
Yes, by a lot, by about 3.7 million or something like that. No, sorry, 2.7. The salary floor. I got to
salary floor. I think is 700,000. But 700,000. The closer you get to the floor and the ceiling, the harder it gets to continue to drop. So it'd be very rare that Sargent drops probably much more than this. Like he'll have to finish literally last place again to drop again. And when we mean last place in fantasy points, not last place in race finish position, they're closely correlated, but not always the same. So 4 million is pretty dang low for mid-season salary. Yeah, I think. I actually agree with William. Kind of, that might be a good time to pick him up. Would I pick him up for one race? Probably not. I think that'd be a little bit risky, but Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it is possible that he could drop lower, but it just does. It's the same thing at the top. Right? The salary max in the middle of a season is technically 33 million. The most Max Verstappen hit last season, I think, was 31.2 or something. Just because as you get closer and closer to that, it gets almost impossible. You literally have to finish first every week for 10 races in a row, or last every week for 10 races in a row. It just gets really hard.
And then with the fantasy points, the other thing is you have to look at how the improvement points would shake out for others, how the teammate points would shake out for others. You would for Max to get up to 33, you would not only need him to crush it every week, you would need Checo to have terrible weeks every week so that Verstappen could get the teammate points, because you do score points in other categories.
I would argue that if you're signing Sargent, maybe it is a one race contract, because as much as I love the guy, I don't really want any part of him at Monaco. So if I'm picking him up, I'm signing him for one race. He's going to go up in value, lock in a little profit. Don't touch him at Monaco, and then bring him back for Canada, back in his home hemisphere.
And quite frankly, he hasn't qualified very well all year. And Monaco qualifying dictates how your entire race is going to go. So just sneak peek to next week's show. We'll probably be emphasizing people who qualify well next week.
Yes,
but you should consider that when you're considering your contract lengths, because we do have that race looming ahead of us.
Yeah, Emily, I have Max, Lando, Hülkenberg, Yuki, and Haas with one open seat. I have 15 million in the bank. Anyone worth dropping to be able to afford Piastri for the value bump? Max, Lando, Hulk.
Yeah,
Yuki.
The answer is yes. Yeah. I would be. This was one of my points coming in. I would move mountains to get Piastri on my team this week, and I would be signing him to a 5-race contract. I think he's undervalued after what happened in Miami. We saw what those upgrades did for Lando's car, and now Piastri is going to have the full upgrade package. I think they said he had about half of them for Miami. Piastri is the guy I want on my team, and I will drop whoever it takes in order to move the money around to get him.
There you go, Emily.
Okay, so the drivers were Max, Lando, Yuki, and Hulk, right?
Do we have any dissenting opinions on Ryan's comment, by the way?
I would absolutely want to jump on Piastri as well.
Yeah.
The question for Piastri is just contract length. That's it. Yeah. Otherwise,
yeah. So that's what I was going to say, Ryan. I feel like I'm hold on. I'm pulling up his
I probably swap Hülkenberg if I had to pick.
Because Hülkenberg I would agree is approaching his. I mean, he's going to plateau soon in value.
Yeah. This might be the Hülkenberg for Magnussen switch. That gives you enough money for it.
Yeah, you could go Magnussen.
So just going back to contract length on Piastri, he peaked at 22.4 million in Australia. Do you think he's going to go back up to that, Ryan, in 5 races?
I think he will. I think he's shown he's a very capable driver. I mean, we saw what he put together last year once McLaren really got their act together. And I think with these upgrades they brought, I'm buying McLaren. I like that team, and I think Piastri is more than capable of getting up to, definitely exceeding that 22 that he started the season at. He might be up just under that tier of the Ferraris. I don't think he'll ever catch the Ferraris or Norris, but I think he'll be in that tier above the Mercedes, above Alonso, and just be solidify himself in that 23, 24 range.
Jenna, 16.5 million left, and I need a driver and a constructor.
16.5 left.
Oh,
yikes!
You need a driver
and a constructor. Okay, so, constructor on the cheap.
Give me Sargent and Haas. 16, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
give me Sargent and Haas, or maybe Williams and now Magnussen would be too much. That would be 15.5.
Yeah, I think you're right on Haas. I mean, Haas has A-race average fantasy points is 94, which is higher than Alpine, which is still overpriced at 14 million. So I think Haas is probably the right choice.
Yeah, give me Sargent and Haas. Haas will give you exposure to Magnussen's upside as well.
Haas will put her back 12, which is going to leave only what? What was the number? 15?
Oh, I'm sorry.
16.5.
16.5. Yeah, 16.5. Yeah, so that'll fit. 11, 9, and 4 would be
Yeah, that feels
15, 9.
That feels like a good. There could be some upside there. I mean, if Kevin Magnussen and Sargent have decent events, that'll be a good move. Question is how many races does she sign him for? I would go I wouldn't be going long. I'd try and recapture that value as soon as I could. Maybe 2, maybe longer on Haas. I don't know.
I would do the opposite.
See, I'm an instinctual player. I just.
Yeah, Magnussen is the, in my opinion, the best of the back, or has the highest potential of the back. And if Behrman does sub in for him, it's either a fair swap or an upgrade, depending on how you look at it. So I'm not opposed to a longer contract on Magnussen right now. But I would rather free up the money on the team side sooner. So I would go shorter team, longer driver there. And maybe that's 3 and 2 or 3 and 4. Nothing longer than that.
Okay, let's get into our own teams here. We'll revisit some of these specific questions once we get through that. So I think we're going to do our own team reviews, then we'll get into undervalued, overvalued, all that sort of stuff. So I'll just start. I got smoked last week. As I already said, I lost 4.8 million in team value, which is probably one of the worst weeks I've ever had in the last couple of years. And I don't have a lot of options going into this week. I only have I had 2 spots open, and with them I signed Piastri. So I'll just say the existing people on my team, I have signs. I have 4 races left on his contract, and then I have Stroll, Albon, and Magnussen, who all super helped me out in Miami. They all roll off with 1 week left, so I'm kind of in trouble there. On Stroll total, I'm down. By the way, if you all haven't seen, you can tap on a driver now on your My Team screen, and you can see the total value you've made on them during their contract. So Stroll, I'm down 0.4. So my hope is that he can, have some good race this weekend and actually recover before he drops off. Albon drops off next week as well for me, or this weekend. I'm definitely hosed on him. He's down 3.3 from what I signed him, and there's no way he's going to recover that in one race. I think if I'm lucky, I'll lose, 2 million on him instead of 3. Magnussen, I've lost 1.6 on, so could be some mitigation this weekend if he does well. So my 2 empty spots, I put Piastri at 19.7, and then I put Aston. I put Piastri for 5 races, and then I put Aston Martin for 2. So that's mostly a gamble on Stroll, which makes me nervous. But that's what I'm thinking. But I still have some analysis here to do, because I still have 18 million left in the bank after this roster. But Verstappen just rolled off, so he's locked. I don't want to sign Perez or Norris, because I think they're pretty capped. If Norris has another second or first place, he could probably go up $1 million. But I don't want to count on Perez. Verstappen's not going to go up in value. If I did sign Norris, it would just be for, kind of a legacy play. I wouldn't expect much value out of him, but, could capture some points. So that's what I have going as of right now. Of course, I'll be paying attention to practice sessions, which we always encourage, and, might be making some changes since I have so much left in the bank. I'll pass it off to William.
All right. So I lost 3 million last week myself. Wasn't the best week for me. I had Max, who drove into a cone and messed up his floor. I had Alonso, where the sprint was terrible, and that set them back. So I lost a tiny bit of value there. I have Alonso coming off this week. Albon also coming off this week. His race was a disaster. Lance Stroll, I had him as talent driver. I still have Lance Stroll, and we know how that went. I've also got Bottas and Red Bull on my roster right now, so about 35 million to play with. 34 million to play with. 2 drivers to fill. We'll look at practice. I right now am probably keeping my eye on the Ferrari upgrades. They ran a filming day, test session with the upgrades not that long ago. They're bullish on them. If that translates to practice times, I probably look at Sainz and Sargent as my signings this week. And then I just roll with Bottas and Stroll as obviously I'm not touching Max and Red Bull. If I'm a little bit more ambivalent, maybe I just dump Bottas and take Sargent and then reassess my options if Ferrari's not looking that great for some reason.
Cool.
Maybe I go Piastri and a Haas driver. That's another option I'm toying with. Or Gasly. Like there's a lot of ways I can go. I want to see what practice looks like. That's what I'm really getting at, which is sort of a non-answer. Like if I like Alpine and I'm feeling gambly, I actually am kind of intrigued by Gasly as talent driver.
Oh, whoa. Okay, interesting. That would be a bold move.
We'll see though. We'll see.
Who do you want to pass it off to?
I should pass it off to somebody. How about Ryan?
All right. You guys are in here talking about practice, like not qualifying, not the race, but practice. Like I've already got my lineup pretty much all set. I had a little bit of a purge, 4 people rolling off contract, probably for the better based on how my season's been going. So the 2 that I had staying are Verstappen and Stroll. I still have 1 race left for Verstappen, or 2 races left for Verstappen actually. And then this last one for Stroll, who even if I didn't already have him, I would advocate signing him as talent driver because I don't know. I think I need an intervention. I keep using him. It keeps failing, but I'm still on top of that. Like I said earlier, Piastri's on the team, 5-race contract. I'm excited for that. I think that's going to be a huge boost for me. And then I went with McLaren as constructor. So I guess I'm just doubling down on McLaren. It's the first time this season I've actually had a constructor outside of like the bottom 3 in value. So changing up the team strategy just a little bit. And then to fill in the rest of the lineup, I have Tsunoda and Magnussen. So I'm feeling pretty good about this one.
Interesting. Okay, Michael, that leaves you.
Yeah. So I had the most amount of people rolling off my team, 3 drivers, 1 constructor. I dropped out of first place in our league due to a poor showing last week. But that's actually like a pressure relief, right? So like now that I'm not in first anymore, I'm in second. I'm trying to focus more in value and not caring as much about leftover bank balance, which is another risky gamble. But I need more contract value. I need more team value than I currently have to try and finish the year in first, which is my goal. So locked in, I have Verstappen, Piastri, and Tsunoda. I have Verstappen for a few more races left. Piastri is going to be a new pickup for me, as well as Tsunoda. I had Tsunoda on lockout last week, which is why I had Stroll as talent driver. I would have preferred to run Tsunoda last week. So those 3, I think, are kind of the 3 best selections you could start your lineup with. And then I think from that point down, everyone's gambling a bit until we get a bit more information from practice. Don't care what Ryan says about locking his lineup in. He makes last minute changes all the time.
I was gonna say, Ryan's usually one of the most vocal about watching practice sessions.
This feels like a bluff. That's what it
rule.
feels like to me.
Yeah. Sandbagger.
Well, okay. Mike, also speaking of strategy here, like Mike divulging that his strategy is to finish the year in first place. That's a pretty good strategy. It's also mine, and I think everyone else on the call. So,
well, I'm the only one who
Breaking
successfully executed that. Like the last 2 years.
That's true.
Just saying.
Yeah, William, you are the best player out of all of us, but there's more competition this year because you had a poor start. But
anyway, you know what? I sniped it at the end last year too. So
you did snipe it at the end last year. So out of the best of the rest, as I'm calling it, I'm looking at McLaren as a constructor, not for contract value, but just for kind of safety points. I think they'll do well. There's a little bit of upside in the financials, but not much. But I am looking at McLaren for a constructor. If not, I'm looking way down market towards the bottom of the constructors and going all on the driver's side. But the problem is there's not really a lot of value to be had in the top 10 right now outside of Piastri, in my opinion. I saw a question about Lewis Hamilton, not bullish right now. Russell, not bullish right now. So I'm thinking if you go heavy on the driver selection and you have 110 to 120 million in bank value, you're going to have a lot of money left off this week if you're trying to chase contract value like I am. So I'm very much looking at the Alpines. I think it's going to have low adoption in the leagues still. I don't think a lot of people are going to be risking going to the Alpines this quickly. And there's a lot of upside there for them. So the rest of my lineup is in a little bit of flux right now until we get some more data, but I'm looking at Alpine, I'm looking at Albon, and I am not looking at Sargent. That is for sure. I'm not signing Sargent this close to Monaco. That is a poor move in my book.
Not even for one?
Not even for one.
What I just want to say, it's like Garrett's comment. The amount of times I'm hearing Lance Stroll being in a lineup in this video concerns me. And I want to say, I at least feel like what the first step to an addiction, right, is admitting you have a problem. Like I'm admitting using Lance Stroll as talent driver yet again is a problem. I think everyone has their vices. Some people it's drinking, some drugs. Like me, it's just Lance Stroll talent driver. And I'm admitting I have a problem. Yeah. And it's like, at least you get a high out of the drinking or the drugs. There's no high to having Lance Stroll. It's just, it's miserable the whole time. I don't know why I'm stuck doing it.
There could be an occasional high. It's just, it's far and few between. All right, we get back to Q&A. We got 25 minutes left. There's a lot of questions. Ann Rocks, question, picking Aston Martin for increase in value or just go with Haas V-Carb? I'm going value. I just lost a lot, so I got to get it back. I'm not making any decisions the next couple of weeks personally, solely focused on points. So I got to recover. That's why I put Aston Martin on my team. Just doubling down on Lance Stroll. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. V-Carb Haas. I think we made some comments earlier about Haas. I think Haas could be a good pick.
I like Haas better of the two.
Yeah. I think Haas, if you were to, compare points and value, like I said, they have more average fantasy points per race than they're tied with one team, the RB ahead of them, and then Alpine 2 spots ahead of them. They're beating by 2 points. So I think there's a lot of value there. It's just going to depend on, I think, like Aston Martin, I think both of these teams are probably going to come down to one specific driver. And I mean, do you want to bet on Stroll or Magnussen in Monaco? I think is probably the question. Okay, I have 2 leagues where I need to choose full teams. Based on your comments, I should focus on drivers versus teams. Well, if you're talking about full rosters, I mean, you gotta kind of think about the full picture. But long story short, if you weren't here at the beginning, teams can go up in value or down. 3 million drivers can only go 2. So you really got to be looking at this. I would actually say this is a great race to probably come into the season because there's a lot of value after Miami. There's a lot of people that dropped. I think like if you pick your spots right, starting right now, I think you could get a lot of value over the next 2 to 3 events pretty quickly. So I don't know that we'll have time to fill out the full roster for you, but
what's your budget? That's the other question. Like, is it the standard 100 mil? Do you have more than that? Hopefully you have more than that at this point on, unless you've just started. Maybe you just joined your league and 100 is what you have to work with.
Yeah. Dakota, would you drop Carlos for Piastri? I have Carlos for 2 more weeks. Carlos would be an expensive one to drop at the top of the field. I have Carlos. I'll just tell you, his release fee, basically $800K.
Yep.
Again, I would say this probably depends on how much extra cash you have. But all things being equal, should somebody drop Carlos for Piastri? Carlos is at 26 million. I'm just looking at his salary.
Ask me that again Friday afternoon because Ferrari's got some upgrades coming. Like Piastri's got all the upgrades coming. Ferrari's got upgrades as well. So Ferrari might be better anyway. And
yeah, it's hard to say too. I'm like thinking in my back of my head, I'm like, where's this person at in their league?
Well, the only way Sainz gains value is if the finish order is Verstappen, Perez, someone Sainz, and that someone can't be Leclerc. Mm-hmm. So like in order for Sainz to gain value, like you have to be looking at like who's going to finish ahead of Sainz because he is expensive. So that's a little tough, right? So, and especially if Leclerc beats him, then it's probably not the best move. So the top of the top of the blue chip drivers right now are all near their peak in terms of value. Like I'm not seeing a lot of value there.
Are we thinking that Red Bull 1-2 is a lock every week?
No.
I don't either. That's what I was getting at as well.
No.
Like I could see him beating Checo. Because Checo's not that consistent.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah, but Sainz is threading the needle. You need, he needs to be finishing in the top 4, top 5 from fantasy points.
If there's an accompanying move with that salary, then yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I lagged out for a second.
No worries.
So somebody asked how many active teams are there on the app. Number 2 overall happens to be in our league. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say it's 80,000, somewhere between 80 and 100 that started the season. So number 2 is, top 1,000 is impressive. So number 2 is obviously great.
Yeah.
Can Sargent value go down under 4-way? We already asked her this earlier show. The answer is yes. Quite difficult, once you start getting that low. The salary floor is 700,000, but it's very, very difficult to get that low once you're in the 3.5, 4 range. So for that to happen, he'd have to, for the next several races, finish last place in fantasy points. So it's just very unlikely. If you have even one DNF in the field and Sargent just finishes, he'll rank 17th, and that's going to elevate his value, or at least maintain it where he's at. So
I've got a quick one, also Sargent related. If Williams drops Sargent, what happens in the app? So the rule in the app is if Sargent is officially dropped by the team, then his contracts would drop as well. And the new driver would then be signable, whoever that new driver is. It would not work the same as a sub would. But don't be confused. If Logan is still a signed driver, but they give his race seat to someone else for 1 or 2 races, that's a sub. So it depends on what Williams actually files with the FIA, because we work off of what the FIA does, not our own custom rule set. So that's the answer to that. Another quick one I saw: is there an inherent downside to exclusively sign 1 race contracts for each race? Yes, a massive one. The 1 race lockout rule. So if you sign 5 drivers to a 1 race contract, you cannot sign those drivers to the next event. So now the 20-person lineup is now a 15-person lineup. So you just took a bunch of available drivers out. There's no right answer to how many drivers you should have rolling off at any given time. My personal strategy is I always want two things, either a driver, a constructor, or 2 drivers rolling off every single week, so I could be reacting to changes in the sport. And the most, I just said earlier in the call, this is the most I've ever had. I have 3 drivers and 1 constructor rolling off at the same time. And for me, that's a little anxiety driven because of how many things I'm locked out of. And that's a game mechanic. That's part of the strategy of the game. So you can't just keep re-signing the same folks.
Yep. Andrew asked, any update on the web app? That's probably not going to be something you're going to see for quite a while. It's for sure a next year thing. There's a lot of priorities over that. You're probably going to see real-time scoring in our mobile app before you see a web app. So unfortunately, it's pretty far out on the roadmap. I would not expect it this year, barring some sort of internal miracle. Let's see. Is Lewis worth signing? He lost a ton of money at the start of the season, but now his value is low. Lewis to me is like, I would say no. I don't know. I don't look at him and see any sort of, I feel like Lewis is kind of right where he should be,
Yeah, his value is not low.
He was toying with talent driver territory there for a couple races, and then he pulled out of it. So I just don't, I don't see any real strategic reason to bring him on. I think there's other drivers above and below who, are close in price, who maybe have more upside or more points potential. So that's my opinion.
I don't see Mercedes getting any better.
Yeah, I agree.
No. And with Lewis is at 20, we've already gone over this, but Piastri is at 19.7. And I don't think there's any reason whatsoever to spend more money on Lewis Hamilton instead of Piastri.
Nope. And Russell's outperformed him so far this season, so you're not going to get teammate points. He's at 20.1 million, which means he'd have to be in something like the top 8 or 7 in fantasy points to gain value. With Alpine potentially coming up, with how McLaren's doing, I'd stay away from Lewis right now.
I have Max, Carlos, Lance, Alex. and an empty constructor. Should I drop someone to get Oscar and pick up Williams too? Well, if you only have Max, Carlos, Lance, and Alex, then you have an open spot. If I'm not missing something, that's only 4 drivers. Do you not have enough money to pick up Oscar as your 5th spot? If that's the case, I don't know, guys. Like Max, Carlos, I wouldn't. Those are going to be expensive drops. Maybe Albon. Like Albon's kind of in a rut. It seems like he would be that's just my initial instinct. I think he'd be the one I dropped if I was trying to find a way to fit Piastri, and that probably could definitely be a good move. I mean, I've had Albon for 5 races, and he's went down in value every single one of them. So
yeah,
he rolls off on my team.
Paying a drop fee for a driver who just lost 1.7 million, you have to look at it as like, this is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, I'm going to lose another 1 point. I'm going to lose more. If you think you're going to lose, this is a general rule of thumb. Pay the drop fee if you think the driver is going to go down in value more than the drop fee. If you think that the likelihood of that is high, pay the drop fee. But if you don't pay the drop fee. Keep them for one more race and kind of hope things work out.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. What are the 4 best teams ranked globally? I don't know. Maybe one of you guys can look. 4 best teams.
This is an odd week to look at the global leaderboard. The global leaderboard, just coming from experience, the global leaderboard last week is probably more indicative of where things will go than after this event. This event was had some kind of wild card results, and that might not. I'd be surprised if the global leaderboard right now sticks for more than 2 events. Like if the people who are at the top right now continue to be at the top for the next few events, just on how Miami went down and how the next 2 races are looking to go down.
The second place team scored 1,109 points last week.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
That lineup was Verstappen, Tsunoda talent driver, Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, and Ferrari, which is, a lot of solid choices all around there, especially Tsunoda talent driver.
Gosh, you're already seeing teams above 130 million. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I was checking the global leaderboards. My app got stuck on the NASCAR global leaderboards. There's this guy, Ryan B., who's in 1st and 3rd globally. That's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive. Ryan hacked into the system somehow and gave himself a bunch of points, I think.
Yeah.
That is impressive, though. Yeah. NASCAR, if you have NASCAR fans in here, I know there's not always a lot of overlap between, the Formula One NASCAR audience, but the NASCAR game is a whole different dynamic to play. Mostly the same rules, but just with how much, chaos and kind of unpredictability there is in that series versus Formula One. Definitely very strategically different. Like I feel like in the NASCAR game, you just can't count on. You can't really predict as much safely. I think in this game, Formula One's like so predictable that it's really clear when a driver is like undervalued, right? You know how their car performs, generally speaking. If they had a bad race, and the next couple are probably going to be good. But NASCAR, at least for me, Ryan's obviously figured out how to do it. But
yeah, check it out; it's fun.
Yeah,
I know most of the top players in the game by name, and I just looked at the global leaderboard, and one of those people is currently in the leaderboard, and that person's lineup actually will probably carry over well to the next race, and that's Norris, Sainz, Alonso, Piastri, Tsunoda talent driver, Racing Bulls. So with some minor adjustments, that could be there's some competitive lineups. If he still has Norris and Piastri moving forward, that is a competitive lineup. That's one of the better ones I'm seeing on the global leaderboard. And that player is consistently in the top 100 this year and last year. So
must be nice when all of your midfield picks early in the season work and you built that value.
Yeah, I know. Wish I had that budget.
Okay, Nicholas Norman. I have 61 million for 3 drivers. I currently have Piastri and Stroll with Williams. Who would you pick? 61 million. 61.
Okay.
Let's see. I think the first question would be, and you don't have to answer, but I'm just thinking out loud, is like, are you prioritizing points or value at this point in the season? So some of these are hard because I just don't know where these people are at in their leagues and like what they're exactly trying to accomplish. But 60 million, 3 drivers. I feel like you got to get. I mean, he doesn't have a top. He's got Stroll and Piastri. He doesn't have anyone that's going to get points. I feel like of the top guys that could get him points, I feel like Norris. I mean, Norris is of the top 3, the one that could have some upside, but it's not very much. He's only 5 points less on 8-race average than Verstappen and Perez.
Yeah,
So that might be something to consider, but that's close to half your budget. Tsunoda. He didn't say Tsunoda, did he? No.
Didn't say Tsunoda. I would be personally on the. You need a driver at the top for points, right? Otherwise, you're going to fall into a points hole. So I would be looking at Sainz as, like, again, not going to gain in value, but they're not going to gain in value much, but like a good value for one of the, like, a podium potential driver, except for obviously Piastri. But he's 26.3. Then if you put Tsunoda on, that's 14.9. That's 41.2. So you still have some room at 61, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would be looking at that right now. Sign Tsunoda, then go cheap on the constructor. Someone, just benchmark Haas. That's 11.9, 53.1. Then you got a driver selection at the back. Then you could pick up a Magnussen, right? 7.8. There we go. 60.9. Yeah. Just built you a lineup.
Or go really top heavy. You could take like Norris and Sainz and then Sargent.
There you go. That's
but
that's
I
not best
avoid
for
Sargent.
too. If you're again going back to points versus value, I think that's definitely would be a great play for points for sure, and maybe get lucky on Sargent and get some value too. Let's see. BG says I have 27 million for one driver, but Sainz is my lockout. Piastri or take budget hit and drop Stroll to pick up Leclerc and Ricardo.
That's a lot of moving pieces.
I don't like Ricardo.
I'd take Piastri. Yeah, you have some leftover money for the week.
It's okay if you have a little bit of money left over.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the lineup that uses the most money is not necessarily the perfect lineup.
Yeah.
I have 26.7 for one driver. I would definitely benchmark Piastri, then wait for practice and see if anything else, either a driver or constructor, makes sense to pay a drop fee to pick up someone else that you don't have. But in my head right now, if I was in your situation, I would just be benchmarking Piastri and then waiting for practice to see if I should pay a drop fee.
And what's your constructor situation? That might be another place to look for a change if maybe you're trying to get some more points.
All right, we're running out of time, so I think let's go. Oh, you said Red Bull. Let's go. Just last conversation, just talent driver. I know we probably already touched on it a little bit, but right under the threshold, you don't have anyone close to it at this moment. But you have Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, and then you have Ocon in 12th. So there's quite a few options. You could always go Stroll if you want to get crazy, but there's a lot of ways to play this. I feel like this weekend with how many drivers dropped in value, like you could see if any of these lower ranked folks, Magnussen, Sargent, finish well, they could be huge opportunities for talent driver points. But I think the safe bet is obviously, going with somebody that's right below the threshold, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda. I don't have a lot of flexibility on my team this week, so I'm stuck with Lance Stroll. Unless I want to pivot to Albon or Magnussen. So, if I was really, really taking a flyer, I'd hope for Magnussen just having some crazy race, but that would be definitely in the high risk category for me. What are you guys doing, talent driver wise?
Still undecided. We'll see with practice. I still have to sign drivers. So an Alpine driver is a possibility. Tsunoda is a possibility. It's probably going to be somewhere in that territory. I don't know that I do Stroll talent driver again, unless I see a lot of pace from them, which I don't know that we're going to see that.
Yep.
I'm going down with the Lance Stroll ship. One last race, one last time. Until
Molly
lockout.
asked where. Oh, you responded as well. Yeah, where'd you say you can see amount lost or gained? So if you tap on the driver's name on your My Team screen, it'll.
No, we
it'll-
have that. We have that turned off right now. It'll be turned
Oh, we
back
do?
on
Okay.
later today. Yeah, it'll be back on later today. So I typed in the workaround.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
We're making a bunch of updates to the app after the outage for Miami to make sure things go smoother for Imola, considering we're having a lot of app traffic now. So
Cool. Any closing thoughts from y'all?
yeah, I think we all should be way more excited, and I think F1 should be more excited about racing in Imola again. It's been a while, haven't been to this track in a while. It's exciting. It's an alternative. It's not Monza, but it's still in Italy. You've got a lot of history there. I mean, this is the Senna track. This is an exciting race, and I wish F1 was promoting it more. I'm excited to see Imola come back onto the circuit. And we also don't know how long we're going to have Imola. The contract is up after next year, and nothing's been re-signed yet. So Imola is definitely a racetrack to celebrate and focus on.
Yeah, historic European tracks are an endangered species in this sport, and that saddens me.
I agree.
But hey, we can always give more dates to the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
And random street horses.
Yeah, I know. Cool. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's show. We appreciate you all gathering. We're excited to reconvene in just a week's time for the Monaco GP, which, by the way, if you weren't at the top of the stream, there's already an event live for that. You can go save it, go to our YouTube channel and find that show if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that next week. Everybody enjoy the weekend, enjoy the race in Italy, and we will talk to y'all soon.